Man, there's a bunch of topwater baits out there, and there's different ways to fish them, and it really depends on how you fish them, what gear you're using, how successful you're going to be with them. So I bet you've tried quite a few different topwaters at this point and are kind of struggling to get a lot of bites. So hopefully we're going to rectify that today. First of all, yeah, lots of topwaters out there. So let's break it down a little bit. The most common one, the most productive one in my opinion out there is the walking style baits, like the Zara Spook and the Sammys. You can fish those when the water's got a little bit of ripple and chop in it like it is right now today. That breaks up the water, the light penetration. You can fish them in super clear water, and it's gonna call them from great distances, 20, 25 feet deep water, like over a point. I've had some smallmouth come up like a Polaris missile and clock them. And I mean 4 pound, 4.5, 5 pound smallies in a bright bluebird day like this. You can also fish along riprap. You can fish it along docks, over the top of weeds, over points with scattered boulders, stumps, scattered weeds, that sort of thing. Dingy water works really well. Even on dirty water, it works. Just the commotion that they make, that you have to work them so they walk back and forth. But that action, man, Zara Spook has been around since the 70s, dudes. I mean, and it still catches fish. It is a very, very productive lure. Walking style baits are extremely popular and very popular for a reason, and that's because they catch fish. So don't be afraid to throw them, not just in the early morning or in the evening hours, but throughout the day. If the fish are there feeding on bait fish, then they're going to hit a Zara Spook. Another type of bait to use are the popper style baits, like the Rico and the Popar, or the pencil poppers, the chug bugs. Those work best when the water's slick calm. Really, it's calm, the wind is down. Early morning works best for me, but also, you know, just when you're not getting a lot of movement, even if it's sunny like this, throw it out there, let it sit, and give it a couple pops. And that's the thing, don't tug so it goes through the water. You want to pop, pop, and make it spit water. So a hard jerk, just pop, 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 and make it spit some water, and then let it sit. And that's the key, you're letting it sit. You're trying to imitate an injured bait fish or a dying bait fish that's struggling on the surface. So you gotta let it sit for a while, because that's what happens. If you ever sit there and watch one that's struggling on the surface, they flail about a little bit, and then they wait and get their energy back and hang out, and then they flail some more, and then they wait. So that's what you do. You pop, 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 and then give it a rest. 10, 20, 30 seconds, then pop, 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 and wait again. And a lot of times you get blasted even with the bait isn't even moving. So those are best in the slick, calm, and even clear water. The clearer the water, the better. But it will work in stained and muddy conditions too, but it excels in really clear water. It's more of a visual style bait. Then you've got your buzzbaits. Buzzbaits, to me, if you want to cover a lot of water, buzzbaits work really well. You can, cast and reel and just go along the bank and cover a lot of water. Works great when you've got submerged weeds like milfoil, hydrilla just under the surface. You can call a lot of fish out of those weeds with buzzbaits that make a lot of commotion. But fishing them right along docks, you gotta run them alongside docks. A lot of times those fish are right up under the docks, especially if there's some weeds right next to the dock. If you can run that buzzbait along there, man, it's golden. If you got pencil reeds, running it through the pencil reeds can be good too. Yeah, don't be afraid to do that. Or if you've got some lily pads that's got some openings and not fully matted out in this kind of sparse lily pads, running them between all those, a lot of times you can catch fish that way with buzzbait. And then finally, your frogs and toads. These work great when the weeds are on the surface or even matted over a little bit. These sit on the top, and you can work it across the top, create quite a bit of commotion, and the fish underneath will track it from that movement. And when you get to an opening, boom, the fish will blast it that way. Or you can fish along the sides of docks. Same thing like you would a buzzbait. You can catch a lot of fish that way, or across scattered boulders, scattered stumps on a point, or outside weed lines. If you're fishing a toad, what I like, the difference between a toad and a frog, the toad is a solid body. It's got the legs kick and they gurgle, and they make a more subtle bubbling action than a buzzbait, and sometimes that's what the bass want. Just reel it and cast it like you would a buzzbait, but at a little bit slower speed. You can move it slower than a buzzbait. But you're rigging on a 4/0 or 5/0 keel-weighted hook, like a 1/4 ounce hook with a screw lock on it, and you work it across the weeds and find an opening. And when you find an opening with a frog, you pause it, and sometimes the bass will blast it like I just mentioned, but other times they won't. And if they're not going to come up and blast it, that's when a toad falls down and goes right to the bass. and they can't resist it. They got to blast it. Or fishing on the outside weed lines. You can almost pitch it like you would a jig and let it, run it for a while, then kill it and let it fall on the outside weed line. And a lot of times that gurgling action gets their attraction, you kill it, boom, they hit it when it's falling. That change of action, change of direction triggers a bite. So those are the different categories. Now, one of the things that's critical with these lures is a lot of times it's the retrieve. Mix it up. What the fish want one day, they may not want the next day. So sometimes a really slow retrieve, like I mentioned with the poppers, you let it sit, and sometimes you got to let it sit for 30 seconds or longer. Other times they want it really fast, and you don't make any pauses. You just reel as you're popping it back to you. Pop, 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 pop. That fast moving, something skittering across the surface will trigger a bite sometimes. Same thing with the frogs. You can a long pause in between versus just bringing it back, burning it back to you really quick over the weeds. Can be the difference between a bite and not getting bit. Buzzbaits, a lot of times what I'll do is I bring it back as slow as I can while keeping the blades going, but sometimes a quick retrieve works really well. Sometimes giving a quick pause or a quick yank with a buzzbait just to make the blades spit out some more water, a little bit more action. That little bit of change sometimes triggers a bite. So you just got to play with it. That's the key thing, guys, is sometimes when you're not getting bit on a topwater, it's not the topwater's fault. It might be because you're bringing it at a cadence or a speed that it's not attractive to them. So try different retrieve speeds and different cadences and see if that triggers a bite. The other key thing with topwater baits is make sure you got the right gear. So when you're fishing the walking baits, for example, if you've got a really stout rod with a extra fast tip, it's gonna be really hard for you to walk the dog. It's really difficult with it's a strong rod like that. Plus, it's got treble hooks, and when you do catch a fish, you've got to have a rod that gives some give to it when the fish surges so it doesn't rip the hooks out of his mouth. So a medium power fast action rod is perfect for walking type baits. You can fling it out there a country mile and you can work it the correct way. It's a lot easier to work it with a rod like that. And then when you catch the fish, that rod's gonna work in your favor to help keep the hooks pinned and get them to you. When you're throwing a buzzbait though, you want something a little more stout. So a medium heavy powered rod, fast action tip, that's what you want, like a 7'1". That's a jack of all trades rod. You can throw a bunch of different lures on them, and a buzzbait is one of them. That's got a little bit more backbone, a couple things for it, because first of all, you're throwing usually over weeds or through weeds, through the reeds, things like that. So if you catch a fish, you can get them out of that. You're using 15 to 17 pound line, and that lure has a single hook, a stouter hook, and so you need a little bit extra backbone to set the hook and keep the fish pinned. So a stronger rod works in your favor for those type of lures. But if you're throwing those little poppers, they're lightweight. A lot of them are made out of balsa wood. They're hard to cast on bait casting gear. Plus, you need a real light rod because these hooks are small, those treble hooks are thin wire, and it's easy for a fish to rip the hooks out of his face by leveraging a stout rod. So this is when I go spinning. I'll use a spinning rod, and I'll use a medium power light action rod, or maybe even a medium light power light action rod. I'm using real light gear here. I can fling that light bait way out there and work it properly. It's still got enough backbone in it where I can pop, pop, pop. But when a fish hits it, that rod's gonna give right away. It'll bend right away, and that rod's gonna do a lot of the work for you. Do a lot of give and go, and it's gonna keep those hooks pinned and help you get that fish back to you. On the other end of the spectrum is the frogs and the toads. Here you're throwing in heavy cover, heavy weeds. A lot of times the fish grabs it and he buries back down in the weeds. You need stout equipment. This is hand-to-hand combat fishing. So a strong, heavy power, extra fast or fast action rod is what you want. That fast tip is gonna allow you to throw it out there, but once that fish hits and you got them on, you can wrench them through those weeds with that stout rod and get them back to you. And you're gonna keep them pinned. Those frogs and toads, again, have a thicker, stronger, like a 5/0 hook on them. So a stout rod, you're gonna need that to help set the hook and keep them pinned. Let's talk a little bit of some tips though. This is like next level tips. One is the line you use. So when you're using the spinning outfit, I'm using lighter line. I'm using 8-10 pound line, but what's more important is I'm using monofilament. Monofilament floats And same thing when I'm doing the Zara spooks and the walk the dog. I'm using monofilament. The Zara spooks, I'm using like 15, 17 pound line, but it's monofilament because monofilament floats. Fluorocarbon sinks, and it really is difficult to work a topwater lure properly when your line is sinking. Braid has some buoyancy to it, but it still sinks. So when I'm working those baits that are designed to float and stay on the surface, it's always monofilament with me. Plus, again, guess what? Those hooks have treble hooks, or those baits have treble hooks, and monofilament stretches. So that's what you want. That's actually a good characteristic. Some people talk about stretch like it's a bad thing, only because it's a little bit harder to set the hook with a line that stretches. But once you have that fish hooked, now when the fish surges, your rod's gonna give, like I mentioned earlier, but now your line's gonna give a lot of stretch too. It's gonna absorb a lot of the impact of that fight and keep that fish hooked. So you're gonna need a little bit stronger of a hook set, but when you're fishing those smaller poppers, they already have small, thin hooks. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to hook them anyway. It's the Zara spooks, they have the thicker, stronger hooks. But again, you're using a bait casting outfit, a little bit stronger rod there too to make up for it. So just make sure you get a good hook set and the rest will do you good. When I'm fishing buzzbaits, I'm usually fishing braid. Not heavy braid, because I'm usually fishing through reeds, lily pads, over the top of weeds. Typically the fish don't get wrapped up in that too much, so 30-pound braid works really well for me on those instances. A thinner braid, I can cast it further, cast it really well, it's smooth casting line, and it's got that ability to cut through the weeds if the fish does get me in those weeds. But when I'm fishing those frogs with a heavy rod and those stout hooks, and those fish can get those frogs and pull them down into those weeds. Now I'm using 50-pound line, 50-pound braided line. That's hand-to-hand combat. I like Seagar Smackdown line for that. It's never failed me, great knot strength, and I've pulled some fish out of some real thick cover with that line, and it comes out unscathed. So that's really key. And then one more tip is setting the hook on these baits. Number one problem people have with these baits is they set the hook too soon. Why? They see the blow up and they get excited and they set the hook on the blow up. And a lot of times when there's a blow up, the fish hits the bait and you feel that on your rod. You'll feel that tick and it feels like a bite. And so you instinctively set the hook. The difference here is the fish has his mouth open and he is still coming down. He still has yet to close his mouth. And a lot of times when you set the hook right away, you actually yank the bait right out of his mouth before he has a chance to grab it, and you miss the fish. So number one, wait. And you wait until you feel the weight, is like what I like to say. And that is, you feel the fish pulling back on you, like a worm or a jig bite. When that fish is pulling back on your rod, you know he's got it now. And then set the hook. It's really hard to do. I have to remind myself when I'm fishing topwater, I'm like, don't set the hook, don't set the hook, don't set the hook. Wait for the weight, wait for the weight. I mean, I'm reminding myself as I'm reeling and working the lure, because it'll startle you when you get that blast. The fish comes up and just nails it. You gotta, don't set the hook, don't set the hook. Now he's tugging back, boom, set the hook. One more tip I want to give you as far as reels. Reel speed doesn't really matter in this instance. I mean, a faster reel speed helps a bit when you want to work the lure really fast, but it's more important that if you do miss the fish, you want to reel up quickly and cast back out there and get that lure back out there. Maybe he'll bite it again. So a 7-to-1 or 7-5-to-1 gear ratio is what I'm looking for. Something relatively fast. I can work the lure fast that way if I need to, but also if I miss that strike, I can reel it up quick and fire it back out there and hopefully get bit. So those are some great tips for you to go out there and catch a bunch of fish on topwaters this summer. Hope that helps. For more tips and tricks like this, visit bassresource.com.